The first time Jake Simmons stepped into the towering Amazon fulfillment center, he was in awe. The massive warehouse, stretching across several football fields, was a marvel of modern logistics. Conveyor belts zipped by with packages destined for every corner of America, robotic arms moved with mechanical precision, and the hum of industry filled the air. It was a job, a paycheck, something he desperately needed. "Welcome to Amazon," a chipper trainer named Lisa said. "You're about to be part of the world's most advanced workforce." Jake, like many others, believed Amazon was a golden ticket, an opportunity to make a living, build stability, maybe even climb the ladder. He had seen the ads, read the promises: great pay, benefits, career growth. It sounded like the American dream in warehouse form. But the reality hit fast. His first shift was 10 hours long. His task? Stowing, finding space on shelves for incoming products, scanning each item as quickly as possible. The scanner beeped with every scan, and his handheld device constantly reminded him, "You're behind the target rate. Pick up the pace." At first, he shrugged it off. Surely, they didn't expect new hires to keep up with veterans. He worked faster, moving at a near sprint to get from one aisle to another. Then came the second day. Then the third. Each day, Jake noticed something strange. The exhaustion wasn't just his, it was universal. The break room was filled with silent, drained workers gulping water before their short break ended. Some had visible bruises from lifting boxes. Others limped from standing all day. By the end of his first week, Jake's legs burned, his back ached, and his wrists felt stiff from constant scanning. But it wasn't just the physical strain, it was the unrelenting pressure. The scanner tracked everything. If you slowed down, a manager would find you. If you took too long in the bathroom, it was noted. The benefits that lured him in? Sure, he had health insurance, but he'd have to work full-time for months before it kicked in. Paid time off? Barely enough to recover. Career growth? The reality was that most workers lasted a few months before they either quit or were let go for falling behind. Jake started noticing little things. Workers whispering about injuries. The way managers avoided eye contact when someone collapsed. The signs in the break room encouraging employees to report union activity. Something wasn't right, and then on a particularly grueling shift, he saw it happen firsthand. A woman named Maria, someone who had been at Amazon for almost a year, suddenly collapsed. She had been running, scanning, reaching, pushing past exhaustion. Her body gave up before she did. Jake rushed to help, but before he could, a supervisor named Greg stepped in. "Back to work," Greg barked. "Medical is on the way." But medical wasn't on the way. Maria was left there, groaning as work continued around her. Jake knew then, this wasn't a job. This was a machine. And he was just another disposable part of it. He had to know more. He had to find the truth. Jake couldn't shake the image of Maria lying on the warehouse floor. The way she was treated, as if she were just another package that needed to be moved out of the way, made his stomach turn. But what disturbed him even more was how normal it seemed to everyone else. No one gasped. No one stopped working. They barely even glanced in her direction. The next morning, when Jake arrived for his shift, Maria was gone. "Is she okay?" he asked another worker, a tall man named Derek who had been around longer than most. Derek exhaled sharply. "Doubt it. They probably just let her go. Fired." "Man, that's how they do it," Derek said. "If you get hurt, they don't officially fire you. They just stop putting you on the schedule, or they make your job even harder until you quit. That way, they don't have to report workplace injuries. Looks better on their numbers." Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. "That can't be legal." Derek chuckled bitterly. "Legal? Sure. Ethical? That's a different story." Over the next few weeks, Jake paid closer attention. And the more he looked, the worse it got. The bathroom break problem. One day, he tried to time his bathroom break. He had heard rumors but wanted to see for himself. From his station, it took him almost 4 minutes just to reach the restroom. Another minute to wait for a stall. And by the time he was washing his hands, his scanner buzzed angrily in his pocket. Time off, task detected. Back at his station, a supervisor was already there, arms crossed. "You're behind quota, Simmons." Jake opened his mouth to argue, but the supervisor was already walking away. Later that night, he searched online and found countless stories from other Amazon workers. Some admitted to avoiding water so they wouldn't have to use the restroom. Others confessed they had resorted to peeing in bottles just to keep their jobs. Was this really the world's most advanced workforce? The numbers game. Every worker had a quota, packages per hour, scans per minute. And the system never accounted for reality. If the shelves were overstuffed, too bad. If a product was missing from its designated spot, you still had to keep moving. If a robot malfunctioned and blocked an aisle, your scanner didn't care. What scared Jake the most was how those quotas kept rising. Every few weeks, the targets increased, pushing workers to move faster, to work harder, to squeeze more out of their exhausted bodies. The numbers aren't real, Derek explained one day. It's all AI. They track how fast the best workers go, then raise the quota based on that. Doesn't matter if it's humanly possible for the rest of us. If you fall behind, you're out. So, we're just racing against a machine? Jake asked. Pretty much. And guess what? The machine always wins. Jake clenched his fists. He had taken this job because he needed it, but now he realized Amazon didn't need him. They needed numbers. And anyone who couldn't keep up was discarded. Then, one night, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A woman named Angela, a single mother who worked the night shift, was standing by the lockers, tears streaming down her face. Jake hesitated before approaching. You okay? She sniffled and looked away. I just got the email. Jake frowned. What email? She turned her phone toward him. It was a termination notice. A cold, automated message that simply read, your performance has failed to meet Amazon's standards. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. No warning. No human conversation. Just a robot deciding her fate. Angela wiped her face, shaking her head. I have kids, man. What am I supposed to do now? Jake had no answer. But he did have a growing realization. Amazon had built a system that treated people like machines. And if he stayed silent, he was part of the problem. He had to do something. Jake couldn't sleep that night. The scene kept replaying in his mind, Angela's tear-streaked face, the soulless email that ended her job in an instant. He felt anger boiling inside him. The next day at work, he noticed something strange. As he moved between shelves, scanning and stowing items, he caught glimpses of workers whispering in hushed tones. A group of them huddled near the vending machines during break, exchanging quick, serious words before scattering. Something was happening. At lunch, he sat beside Derek and lowered his voice. What's going on? Derek glanced around before answering. Some folks are tired of this crap. They're talking about organizing. Jake frowned. You mean a union? Derek nodded. Yeah, but don't say that word too loud. They're watching. Jake scoffed. Watching? Come on, man. They don't have time to. Derek cut him off. You ever notice those feedback surveys they make us fill out? That's not just for stats. They're looking for troublemakers. And those managers who suddenly show up and start asking workers how they feel? That's not concern. That's surveillance. Jake swallowed hard. He had seen the anti-union posters in the break room. A union will take your money. We hear you, no need for third parties. The company had made its stance clear. So, what are they planning? Jake asked. Derek hesitated before answering. A walkout. Jake's eyes widened. They're picking a shift and just leaving. If enough people do it, management will have to listen. They can't ship 1 million packages a day without us. Jake sat back, his heart pounding. This was dangerous. He had read about Amazon crushing union efforts before, sending consultants to intimidate workers, firing the most vocal ones, even closing entire warehouses where union talks got too strong. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore what he had seen. Angela fired by an algorithm. Maria collapsing on the floor. People skipping bathroom breaks out of fear. Maybe this was the only way to make them listen. That night, as Jake was leaving, he found a small slip of paper in his locker. It had an address and a time. No name. No explanation. But he knew exactly what it meant. He was being invited into the fight. Jake stared at the slip of paper in his hands. He knew showing up could put a target on his back, but after everything he had seen, he couldn't turn away. That night, he drove to the address, a small community center on the outskirts of town. Inside, a dozen Amazon workers sat in a circle, their faces tense but determined. Derek was there. So was Angela. And Maria, recovering but still limping, sat with a brace on her wrist. At the front of the room stood a man in his late 40s, wearing a worn-out hoodie. Name's Ben, he said. Worked at Amazon 5 years. Until they pushed me out. Ben's story was eerily familiar. He had once believed in Amazon's promise of good pay and benefits. Then he got injured. When he spoke up about the inhumane conditions, management started targeting him. Eventually, they found a reason to fire him. I didn't fight back in time, Ben said, scanning the room. But you still can. The plan was simple, a 1-hour coordinated walkout during peak hours. Enough to disrupt operations, enough to make Amazon take notice. If successful, it could spark bigger changes. Jake felt the weight of the moment. Amazon's got eyes everywhere, one worker warned. If they find out, they'll shut this down before we even start. Ben nodded. That's why no emails. No texts. Everything has to be word of mouth. Jake clenched his fists. He had never seen himself as a rebel. But this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Maria. About Angela. About the hundreds of workers being treated like disposable machines. "I'm in," Jake said. One by one, the others agreed. The plan was set. The walkout would happen in 3 days. But Amazon was already watching. The next morning, supervisors were everywhere, watching, listening, taking notes. Rumors spread that some workers had been pulled aside for random performance reviews. Jake knew what was coming. And then, just a day before the walkout, it happened. An email arrived in his inbox. "Your performance has failed to meet Amazon's standards. Your employment is terminated effective immediately." They had fired him. For nothing. But Jake wasn't backing down. If they thought he was out of the fight, they were dead wrong. Jake stared at the email, his hands trembling with fury. He had suspected Amazon would come after him, but seeing it happen so blatantly still sent a chill down his spine. He wasn't the only one. By midday, Derek called him. They fired 3 more people. All of them were at the meeting. Jake gritted his teeth. "They're trying to scare everyone." "Yeah," Derek said. "But it's not working." The next morning, Jake wasn't allowed inside the warehouse, but that didn't stop him from showing up. He parked down the street and watched as the shift change began. Then, right on time, it happened. One by one, workers set down their scanners, stopped moving, and walked out. Supervisors shouted, trying to stop them. Some workers hesitated, unsure if they should risk their jobs. But then Maria, still limping, stood in front of them and raised her voice. "They treat us like machines. They fire us when we break. Enough is enough." That was it. A wave of workers followed. Dozens. Then hundreds. Within minutes, the loading docks were empty. Conveyor belts stopped moving. Orders stopped shipping. Amazon had no choice but to take notice. Journalists swarmed the scene, cameras rolling as workers told their stories, the bathroom restrictions, the injuries, the firings. The world was finally listening. Then came the retaliation. Amazon released a statement calling the workers disruptive and claiming that our employees are treated with respect and have the choice to work here. But that wasn't enough to stop the movement. The walkout spread to other warehouses. More workers spoke out. And soon, the company faced something it had long feared, a serious push for a nationwide union. Jake knew the fight wasn't over. Amazon would do everything in its power to crush the movement. But for the first time, workers weren't just afraid. They were angry. And anger, when organized, was powerful. Jake had lost his job. But he had found his purpose. The truth about Amazon's warehouses was out. And now it was only a matter of time before real change came.